Hi crafters, this is Raquel with Paints and Glitter, and I'm coming along with the Tonic Studios Sweet Treats and Tagine die set. This is a beautiful 36-piece die set that will allow you to create two different styles of boxes. I'm going to be making one of them with you today. The second one you'll be able to make when you learn to make the first one. However, I wanted to point out some of the features and the sentiments. So this is super cute. It makes, of course, a 3D project, and it does have some little sentiments. This one comes with the matching shadow, and that one says, "Oh, go on then." And then there are the ones that will match the little tag. Some of these will deboss into the paper, so there are 3 of those, and that means that you run this on top of glossy or mirror card, and it will leave the indentation onto that paper, or you can just use regular cardstock. I'll show you the one that I'll be using here, and this says sugar and spice. So what I'll do is I'll run some Nouveau Mousse over this and you'll see it a little bit better. And the other ones say for a friend. This one says thank you, and there's this one here that will cut into the paper that says treats. Now what's super cute about this as well is that it does come with this little die here that will create a tassel, and then this long one here also will create beads. So I am going to start crafting with you, and I'll share with you how many pieces you need, etc. So I'll be using a foundation of ivory cardstock, and there are 2 hexagon dies in the set. The larger one is going to be the foundation to your box, so you can go ahead and cut that out twice if you're using the regular Craft Perfect cardstock, which is 80 pound from Tonic Studios. You're also going to need an aperture that you cut with the smaller one. Now what I've done is, because I like those to be quite sturdy, is that I've cut it out of the Craft cardstock from Tonic Studios. Is a little bit heavier than the 80 pound, and then I've also cut it out of that ivory card. I'm also going to be using 6 side panels, so you'll need those. They have a fold line at the bottom with a tab, and then semicircular tabs on the sides. Those are going to let you know that you do need a little bit of a curvature in this paper, so you can always use your paper creaser and go ahead and shape that a little bit. Okay, just like that. So here are the other 5, and what I've done is, as you can tell there, I've used the decorative dies included. So let me share with you. There are 2 different styles. So there's this one here, that's the one that I've used, and then there's this other one here, which is absolutely gorgeous as well. So of course the design team has a bunch of samples, and this has already been released, but I wanted to let you know that I will have links in my description bar of the video, so that if you haven't gotten a hold of this yet, I do encourage you to do so. It's absolutely darling. So I'm just going to adhere this on top. And the one thing that I'll tell you is that I have used the pink cardstock here, is the rose pink card. And as you see there, it says classic card. So those come in a pack of 10 sheets per package, just to let you know. It's a really good value for that type of cardstock, because when you craft with it, you see how darling the colors are, and also the texture. So in my case, because I've layered it, of course you don't see it, but if you just wanted that beautiful linen weave as it is here on the base, then by all means you could just do that. Alternately, you could do what I've done here. I've used the pearlescent cardstock from Tonic Studios, and I'll have to look up the name of this one in particular, but I want to say it's Ivory Sheen. And if you like all of that beautiful color, that's all been done with 3 colors of Nouveau drops. So I've used 2 of them that are Dream drops. I absolutely love these because they're very shiny and pretty. So this is Rudolph's nose, and as you can tell there, it is a red. But because I've placed it on top of the pink, then it looks a little bit more orange, if you will. And then this color here is called Gold Luxe, one of my personal favorites. And for the blue, I decided to use a crystal drop, and of course these are all shiny. And this one is in Caribbean Ocean. And if you didn't want all of it to shine as these do, because you can tell there's a little bit of translucency in that color, you could definitely use a vintage drop. These dry in a matte finish instead of shiny. And this one, for instance, is called Bohemian Teal. That blue would be just as beautiful. Now moving along, let me share with you the other pieces you need. You'll use 6 lid panels, and that's what these are. And you can tell I've already gone ahead and decorated them. So again, all of the layers are available in the set, and you do need a lid top. You can definitely decorate that also. So look how pretty that looks. So we'll be using that. And then we're also going to need side top panels, and that's what these are here. So go ahead and cut out 6 of those. You're going to need 6 of these, and these are the ones that they look like they have a little handle there almost. For the bottom of your box, you do have the option of using this kind of bar. So this is going to create a foundation. I've gone ahead and decorated it, as you can tell there. So pretty. So what I've done is, using the same die, I've cut the paper out twice. Once out of this heavy craft card, the second time out of that ivory pearlescent card, and I cut away the 2 tabs so that I could layer it on top. And then I've used a layering die just to decorate that there. So again, 6 total because this is a 6-sided box. Alternately, there is this little die here that looks like a circle, and it has a little slit that will cut into it, and also a little fold line there. That's because you're going to be able to cut that out and transform it into a little foot. So if you'd rather cut 6 of those, then you can of course do that. And I think that's about it for that. So let's get building. We're going to start with the base. So using this portion here, we're going to start adding our little tabs to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and add the adhesive to the top of that. I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I want this to create a nice strong bond. I'm going to place that right under that hexagon, and this will essentially be the inner lining when it's all said and done. Creates a nice clean finish. If you wanted to, of course, you could use mirror card for this instead, so that way you get a nice little surprise when you open that. But if you happen to have hexagon dies, you know that you can just go ahead and cut a smaller one and place it right on top. But I'm super excited to have been sent this to work with. This, by the way, was bundled with the gumball machine, and I do believe that bundle is still available, which is an excellent value if you love 3D crafts and to gift items using pretty little boxes. Then I do have a tutorial for that gumball machine also. And the design team has several, so there are some beautiful makes with that. So as you can see, I'm just going to go around, and I'll be right back when these 3 are added as well. Once you have reached this stage and you have all 6 panels added, then you can go ahead and flip this over. As you can see there, all of those layers look really nice, and you can opt for adding these, by the way, after you've constructed everything. It's really a matter of personal preference, but I'm going to now go ahead and add this, and it's going to sandwich all those little tabs so that way you don't see them, and this will become a little more sturdy. Just add an ample amount of adhesive so that you can cover everything in one go. And these have a little bit of a curvature to them, so you do have to pay attention to your paper placement to make sure that you don't accidentally overlap one side more than another. And then burnish, of course. Make sure you get that nice tack. Okay, once that is settled, you can flip this over now. And I had mentioned these half moon tabs, you want to make sure you fold them all in, which I've already done. And you want to make sure that you follow the curvature here. Now, because I've added these layers, I'm really going to have to manipulate this quite a bit because my paper is a little more sturdy than it would be if it didn't have that. But I actually like that reinforcement. So I'm going to just make sure, however, that this little portion doesn't lift. So if you see that that starts lifting a little bit, just add a little more adhesive in there. And I really like this type of applicator for that. It makes it a bit easier. But all you need is a little drop on each one of these half moon tabs. And then very patiently make sure that you meet those edges. And make sure that on the top, they're not overlapping so that you don't get a wonky box. So I'm going to pull on this a little bit. So the one piece of advice I can give you is that you definitely want to hold on to these as they're drying. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. So what I'm going to do is just apply the same principle all the way around, making sure that I hold on to my paper, that I really manipulate it to keep that curve in that line there. And I will be adhering all of the sides, and I'll be back once that's done. Gone around all the sides and adhered them one to another, as you see there. You can see the inside also with the little tabs. And I've gone ahead and also taken advantage of these types of little clips to hold some of the corners together, because the paper has a tendency to pull back when there's some weight to it. So I just take the little clip and have it be my hands for me. And you just want to make sure you get an initial tack. And once you do, then place your little clip right on top so it can hold your paper together. But let's set this aside for a moment and work on the lid. Now for the lid, you need these 6 pieces, the little top portion I had mentioned, and your little side panels as well. If you haven't already, go ahead and cut yourself another base panel piece, one of the larger hexagons. Here you can now take this large hexagon and place it pretty side down and start adhering these panels to the outer perimeter. I'm going to actually place the little tabs right along the edge, right here. Flip that over and just make sure that they're meeting the very edge here. And of course you're going to do this 5 more times all the way around. Once you've adhered all 6 sides, now you're going to join these larger tabs to the adjacent panels. Just make sure that your bottom panel is all the way to the edge and that you're matching the angles. This portion will be a little bit easier because you don't have to curve the paper and the tabs are actually wider. So this lid assembly will be much faster than the base. I am going to recommend that you add the layers to the base once that base portion is already assembled, and make sure you put a really good curve on the layering pieces there before you attach them. It's going to allow you to have a better shape to it. And as you've seen me do before, I'm going to add my paper creaser as the support beam, if you will. And that gives me a nice landing place onto which I can add any amount of pressure there while I hold my papers together. Once you have all of those assembled, you're now going to join these side tabs on the top portion all the way around and follow the angle of the paper because it's now going to switch. Once you have all of those neatly applied, now you can fold all of these tabs down. And that's where this piece is going to come in. So you can apply adhesive here or onto the tabs, whichever way. This can go right on top, meeting all those little corners all the way around. So make sure you double check to get a nice even application. Once that's on there, you can go ahead and decorate it with your decorative layers right on top of that. For your lid, you're also going to have these 6 pieces, and these are your lower lid panels. You're advised to adhere these onto your lid, but the way that I'm going to do it is I'm actually going to adhere them to this hexagon here. So what I'm going to do is fold these, and these are all going to be mountain folds. So I'm going to fold every one of them and I'll be right back. Now that I have these nicely burnished along the fold lines, making sure that all of my little tabs face the same way, I'm actually going to take my little ring here, my hexagon ring, and I'm going to apply these right along the edge. Just making sure they meet that outer edge. So I'm going to do this all the way around. Now I'm going to flip this over and burnish. Make sure that all of those little tabs are nice and sturdy there. Okay. And now I'm going to start adhering these little side tabs one to the next little piece here. And this is going to become 3-dimensional now when I do that. So this will be at a 90-degree angle for each one here, following those little tabs. Once those are all adhered, you're now going to overlap this longer tab onto the adjacent panel, and it should meet right along the edge, making sure that it doesn't overlap that little edge. All you have to do is press on it and then match that up, so that way you get a 45-degree angle on those little corners. Nice and neat. Once you have that all fully adhered, as you see there, now you can add this to your lid. And I figured this way it would help me have an equidistant placement of this right on the top. I'll be placing adhesive on this aperture ring, whatever you would want to call it. I'll place a generous amount there. And then I'm going to really be careful about my placement here, because again, I want an equal distance all the way around, making sure that the corners meet the corners. That way, when the lid is placed on the box, it looks really pretty. Okay, and once I have that placed there, you might want to apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that that really does adhere fully. You don't want any lifting on that. In fact, you might want to place this under something slightly heavy, not too heavy because you don't want it to collapse, but maybe under a cutting plate. You can leave it and let it dry. Then we can revisit that because we're going to complete it with our second little hexagon there. In the meantime, calling this a back and forth project, but you really want to allow your papers to dry. If not, it falls apart and nobody wants that. But you have these pieces here that are going to be for the bottom. Now, as you can tell, I've already applied them along the edge of 3 of the sides, but this is going to go all the way around, so you did need a total of 6 of these. Make sure you fold and burnish your little folds as mountain folds, and then with this little handle, if you will, poking up, apply adhesive along that long rectangular tab there, and then apply this along the edge of each one of your side pieces, focusing on making sure that that tab meets that edge. And you can straighten out the paper, of course, to help you. Then just apply some gentle pressure there. Make sure it adheres end to end. You should have something that looks like that along the sides. Once you have all of these applied, now you can start folding them in, and the tabs are going to go underneath on each one. So just accommodate them first if you'd like to. Okay, you're going to apply a little drop of adhesive on each one of those little tabs. And then these are going to join at an angle. So make sure you have those placed as accurately as you can get them. So one tip I can give you is that if you don't want any separation between your papers, allow yourself the time to apply pressure for them to dry. with that adhesive, because if not, you're going to encounter buckling just because of the nature of the paper wanting to pull away. So just be patient. I laugh because I know that I'm not. Be patient. With 3D paper crafts, it's imperative. Okay, we're going to keep moving along. Just applying gentle pressure there along each one of these little tabs. Once you have those all adhered, you can fold these little semicircular tabs down. Get a pretty finish that way. And we can go back to our little hexagon frame here. I'm going to cover that up with another piece of card just to make sure that this is nice and clean and sturdy. So you're going to apply adhesive all the way around. Applying this pretty side up. So make sure that it joins each side. Gives us a pretty finish. Okay, now I'm going to flip this and let that dry as well. Okay, so place a little something on top, nothing too heavy. Okay, this can have little feet now. It's up to you whether you add them or not, but that's where these little pieces come in. They go right along the edge, as you can see there. Now, if you want to, you can cover these little tabs with another hexagon. Of course, you'll have to cut it down, or just use graduated dies if you happen to have them, or you could definitely hide them underneath the panel. Once you flip it over and add that, you could add these first and then add your hexagon on top. Hindsight is always 20/20. But that's okay. We're just going to place these on the bottom. It's not going to be an eyesore anyway, because I don't think anyone's going to be flipping this over to look at it. Just make sure they meet the edge, because these little side tabs are going to help you adhere these one to another. Okay, I've gone all the way around. I've got one more little foot here to add to this base. And of course you want to adhere these little side tabs. So if you want to, you can add the adhesive all at once. It depends on how comfortable you are doing that. And then just make sure you match up those little corners. Just apply gentle pressure there. All the way around. Should look like that, and from the side should now have something that looks like this. Very Moroccan, if I could say so. Seems to be an ongoing theme. Alright, so this should now be dry, and it should fit perfectly right on top. Okay. Nice and snug too, which is really nice. Alright, so we now have our little lid on here. Next, we can work on the little tag I had mentioned. I went ahead and cut mine out of craft card here, so let me zoom in a little bit better. I'd also cut it out of that pink cardstock. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually take this Dream Drop and I'm going to use it as if it were paint. I'm going to add water to that drop and use a paintbrush and go ahead and pick up that Nouveau drop, and then I'm going to use it to color my paper, and this is actually going to give it a little bit of shimmer, and I think it looks so pretty. You can pick up as much of this or as little as you like, but I'm going to apply it here. And then I'm going to take my bead paper. Now it's going to cut these long strips like this, and it's up to you whether you apply this before or after you roll it. But I think it's going to give it a really pretty finish. Of course, with the gold on top of that pink. And it's just such a nice vibrant pink also. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry this just with a heat tool. To finish decorating this little box, I've gone ahead and cut out what will be the beads. And you can start using a quilling tool if you'd like to. You can feed in the wider end of this and then just apply a little thread of adhesive there. And then you can start rolling this. I think it makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to do it terribly tight, because if you want to use this on a ribbon, then you need a little bit of an opening, of course, in the center of the bead. But you're just wrapping that as such. Then you can remove the tool and use it to make sure that it will feed all the way through. And now is when you can apply pressure onto that paper so that it dries nicely. And you can tell that I'm twirling it. Just make sure that it dries really well. And try to feed a small paintbrush, there we go, right in there. And that'll be perfect for you to allow that to dry. So I'm going to just repeat that. So the same way that you create the little beads, you can also create the little tassel. The die included is going to cut a piece that looks like this. And you can again take the quilling tool if you have one and just feed it through. Then apply your little bead of adhesive right along that solid edge and start curling that. Makes it super easy, and if you want that to have an opening, then you can either use the quilling tool itself or a paintbrush, depending on the size ribbon you may want to feed through there. Okay, just a small one will do. And once you have that dry, you can start fluffing that up. I'm going to make one more. I've gone ahead and also used a white gel pen from Nouveau and just traced over the little sentiment there, the sugar and spice, and it was still a little bit wet, so it's not entirely perfect, but that's okay. I'm now going to take a little ribbon, and I'm actually going to feed this through one of the tassels first. I have here a needle with a very wide eye. It's going to make it a whole lot easier. That'll feed through. So I'm going to do a red bead and then one of the teal ones. And then once I've fed those two beads, the red and the teal one, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of this and place the little tag right on that ribbon. You can double that up if you want to. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to do the teal bead, then the red one, and finally the last little tassel. Once I have the ribbon inside of the little tassel, I'm just going to place a little dollop of adhesive there just to get that ribbon to stay. And then I'll cut away any excess once it's nice and dry. Just place it as you think it's going to look cute. And then tie this around. Just going to do a little square knot here. Okay, so this is the finished result, and there you see the little tassels and the beads nicely strung on here with the little label. So if you wanted to, you could always use a piece of dimensional adhesive if you want this to be more static, and then add it right to one of those top panels, or you can just let it be as it is and let it move around. But I think this is quite darling. It's got so much personality in one little box here. So again, there is a second option that you can create. The packaging will have a photo of the gorgeous samples already made by some of the other design team members. And then, of course, you could fill this with some beautiful goodies to gift someone. I wanted to give you the size of this in case you're interested. So the opening here is 4 inches wide, as you can tell there. And as far as how deep this is, it is just under 2 inches in depth there. So if you're wondering what you can fit inside, then that is your measurement. But I think it's absolutely gorgeous. The designs from Tonic Studios, I mean, nothing compares to their 3D designs. I think they're gorgeous. And I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to leave me a comment down below and to use the affiliate links I've provided for you if you want to get your hands on this. And also, if you are compelled to subscribe, then I welcome you to do so if you haven't already done so. And don't forget to check out more future tutorials from Tonic Studios here on this channel. And I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed. Thank you so much for watching.